Welcome to the Grappling Grappling Rewind Podcast.
Welcome to this week on the Grappling Rewind Podcast. In this week's show, we are going to recap the Finishers 17, which featured almost a battle of the brothers. We are also going to recap the IBJJF Absolute GP for 2022, talk a little bit about AJP World Pro, and then that is it for this week. As always on the show, I'm your host, Maine, joined by co-host
Zach.
How you doing, Zach?
Pretty good.
Doing good. We have, there's not a lot of news this week. We're also going to talk about One FC, One Championship. Danielle Kelly took a very quick victory over Sambo champion Miriam there. And
Bia Basilio was also in there with
Bia Basilio was also on the card,
sub,
making her debut on the on that organization. Honestly, that's a good enough place as any to start on the show. Not a whole lot of news this week. We're kind of in the Thanksgiving holidays for the United States. Typically, things sort of wind down news-wise. Everyone eats a lot of food, doesn't make weight, and then proceeds to kind of take 2 weeks off and chillax after Thanksgiving for the most part.
Rest and
Unless
digest.
typically we will have UK events like Grapple Fest typically runs during this time. Polaris will run events because Thanksgiving is not a European holiday, but pretty quiet on the US side where we are based out of. So let's talk about that. Danielle Kelly takes about a 2-minute, 10-second victory for the belt at One FC, One Championship.
Yeah.
Starts out, again, with the rule set, pulling guard.
Yeah, this is something that we were just mentioning this before.
On the
something
we kind of talked about the pre-show.
In the pre-show, we were talking about this. Like,
we're gonna start the show with this.
Can we stop taking people from other grappling sports, throwing them into jiu-jitsu rule sets, and being like, "See, jiu-jitsu's the best." Fucking stop! Like, I don't want to see another goddamn wrestler in a jiu-jitsu rule set. I don't want to see a fucking judo player in a BJJ rule set. Like, it's a different sport. It's a different sport. And so we take us an extremely good Sambo. And I'm not defending the Sambo guys because they can be really annoying sometimes, right? Especially, you know, I mean, in MMA, you have...
Minima is, I think, we did it last week in the show. I think she's a 6-time world Sambo champion. Like, very, very decorated.
Yeah.
Doesn't really get more decorated in the world of Sambo. But again...
They're not playing... It's not Sambo.
Completely different rules. And
it's
again,
not Sambo.
And this sort of speaks to that. Like, you probably... Again, I don't want to speak out of turn here. Probably would struggle to get a more credentialed woman close to Danielle Kelly's weight class in Sambo to compete against her, and then she beats her in a little over 2 minutes.
Right,
like,
and that's
soundly, and that's because of why. It's because the rule sets are so vastly different. Kelly does what she does. She pulls guard.
Right.
She gets neck cranked in kind of the can opener for a minute, and then goes, "Yeah, I'm gonna just take your back here." Takes it back, throws the body triangle in, and then works for the choke. Miriam stands. And then Danielle Kelly kind of fights the choke, finishes the choke, and that's the entirety of the match. It was very, very one-sided because you're dealing with, again, Danielle Kelly, very high-level submission grappler. You're not going to make it to One FC for the big paychecks that they're getting without being a phenomenal and exciting grappler versus a Sambo person that is in a completely different rule set where you can't pull guard. It's a whole different rule set.
It's a whole different thing. It's a completely different thing. And like, yes, grappling translates well. You take a wrestler, you train them in BJJ for a long time, and they're going to be better than another person with the same number of BJJ mat hours, submission grappling mat hours, because they have a long history of grappling experience. The same is true with Sambo people. The same is true with judo people. But you still need the mat hours
in the thing
that you're going to compete in, and like they're close, which is, I think, is the. With Sambo, people have been more interesting because it's still a submission grappling art, right?
Yeah.
The rules are still different enough that I don't really think that it's a worthwhile comparison, and we've seen it now twice
in a couple of weeks.
In a couple weeks, these people that are incredible Sambo players, world champions, the best in that sport, come into jiu-jitsu and get beat under jiu-jitsu rules because that's not the sport that they play.
Yeah.
It's not the thing that they do, and so I'm sick of it. Stop mixing grappling sports. That's the end of my rant.
That's kind of the end of the rant. Again, so One FC also had I'm gonna get the Bias mixed up today. I'm very tired.
Basilio.
Bianca Basilio also took a very, very quick choke win in her One FC debut.
Yeah.
Again, really hope that they
45-second short choke or so. Yeah.
Really hope that they continue to build up like the grappling rule sets. I wish that Amazon Prime Video made it a little bit easier to see bouts.
Yeah, it's not set up for.
It is set up for TV shows and seasons.
Yes.
It is definitely not set up for like individual fight cards.
No,
it took me a while to actually go and find the Danielle Kelly fight itself because I went, okay, she's in the undercard of this particular card, and I had to go like to One FC's site, and
it's hard.
They made it a little easier, but searching it through Amazon I was unable to do it just directly searching through Amazon Prime on the desktop app or desktop web browser.
Yeah.
So hope that they kind of work that out, but still beautiful streaming quality, production quality on One. I think they just hit 10 years is top notch. And
they pay their fighters well.
Yeah. I was tabbing through the card looking for the Daniel Kelly fight, and I went, I'm going to watch this tonight. I'll go back and watch this because it was like there was a bunch of good Muay Thai fights, and generally the product is phenomenal. So that does it for One FC. Zach, where do you want to start? Do you want to start with the IBJJF Absolute GP?
Yeah.
Or do you want to start with Finisher 17?
I think the GP.
Let's start with the IBJJF 2022 GP Absolute GP because they just ran a middleweight GP and women's GP, and they ran this one at the same time as the World Pro, so that Duarte couldn't win all three this year.
Yeah,
that's not a conspiracy theory. That's just what Maine views as now the facts.
How do we want to do it?
Well, let's do it. So I'll run quickly through the quarterfinals, then we'll move on talking about the semifinals, and then we'll talk about the finals. So it's quarterfinals. So first of all, this bracket was a little biased. I love Gutenberg Pereira, and I'm very happy that he got what I would classify as the easier side of the bracket.
Sure.
And you had Cyborg and Conan on one side, and you had Gutenberg as your front runner on the other side. And I went, you're going to put two 80cc champions on the same side that are also world champions in IBJJF, and you're going to put Pereira, who is, again, I think one of our on the show, favorite grapplers in the last year to watch.
Yeah, absolutely. But also the other people on his side of the bracket were, some have not even won a major or placed in a major. It's like we'll talk about it a little bit more in detail, but his semifinals match was a guy that does not have any major IBJJF wins even.
He has a flying triangle win over Oliver Taza as of in Nogi a couple weeks ago.
Sure, but no Pans medal, no Worlds medal, no Brasilia. Yeah, at black belt.
Which is what on the show typically our cutoff point for a lot. When you get on the show on Grappling Rewind, if you get to black belt, you previously, unless it's an 80cc trials win, you're dead to us. Yeah. Your previous record is now your amateur record, and you moved into your professional black belt
outside of those, that first year where we're like, oh well, we saw this thing from them at brown belt, but then after that first year at black belt, everything you did before doesn't matter to me.
Yeah, pretty much. But that's the rule on the show.
Yeah.
Not to take away from anyone's phenomenal world level accomplishments.
But we're talking about professionals.
At the lower belts, but we're talking about professionals at the black belt level, especially in the gi, especially in the IBJJF. Yeah. So caveat with that. I was going somewhere with this, and I forgot.
I don't know.
So first round of the quarterfinals, we had Roberto Cyborg Abreu defeating Henry Cardosa. So Sony points 4-0. So I pulled results from I think BJJ Heroes.
Yes, looks like
and there was a couple of them that were a little off. The same with the finisher results. I pulled those from Flow. I've made edits into some of them, but I may have just added my notes to them and not maybe change the results. So if there is an issue there, don't blame me. The guy in the show. Blame the notes I've got it from and the phenomenal people that created results for us to look at.
So Kynan beats Elder Cruz 2-0 in set quarterfinals. This was really just 2 points for Kynan for basically a sit-up double. Not double. Basically, he pulls, he gets Elder Cruz, so they're both seated guard. Ooh, words there. And then kind of stands him up and sweeps. And then it was the majority. That was 2 points. And then the rest of the match, for 90% of it, was basically half guard. Yeah.
And that was the match. And there was a nice scramble or two in here from a turtle. And Kendall actually, shout out to Kendall. Kendall on the broadcast did a phenomenal job a couple of times explaining specifically why points were being scored or not.
Yeah, she's really good at it.
There was a moment in this match where there was a weird, it looked like Duarte had passed. Mm-hmm. And then in commentary, and everyone was kind of why did he not get points for that? And I was like, I'm not sure. Kind of was I couldn't really figure it out. And Kendall, there was a pause there for a second. And then Kendall, you could kind of figure out that Kendall figured out, oh, there's a gap of knowledge here. And went, oh, he's come to turtle. So IBJJF's, and she explained the whole come to turtle rule. Whereas if Duarte comes to the side control from the turtle, it's not a pass because they were in turtle for 3 seconds. And it was just a phenomenal piece of commentary work for even me and you that watch tons of jiu-jitsu in a moment going why didn't he score there? And then kind of going, because of this rule. Yeah. really appreciate that. And again,
She's really good at that.
Kendall and Chase both did an amazing
they did a
job,
good
and
job for
they're I think that team is like
Very
doing
good.
a lot more flow events, and they are just like the level is just continuing to rise, and I'm very, very happy to hear both of them on pretty much all of the flow events.
I would love for Kendall to commentate every jiu-jitsu event that ever happened.
So, moving on, next match we had Ryder
Zucchi.
Zucchi.
Yep.
Because I've missed his name for a long
they were saying
time now.
Zucchi and Zuki on the commentary, so I'm not sure which one it actually is. But
Ryder Zucchi defeats Gabriel Henrico Oliveira by 2 points. Gutenberg Pereira defeats Francisco Lowe via Kimura. There was a weird thing that happened in this match that I was kind of confused about, and I watched it a couple of times. Gutenberg from the feet, there's a bunch on the feet. Gutenberg snaps down, and then Francisco, like as a counter to that, never kind of goes all the way down. He jumps like a flying, like not a triangle, but like he does a flying guard pull essentially off of it, goes to the mat, no points.
yeah,
It was a weird kind of.
it was. I think so. I saw that. I think it was just a matter of the ref's opinion, the judge's opinion on initiative. It's like a snap down isn't necessarily a takedown attempt.
Yeah,
right? It's like a heavy snap down like that doesn't necessarily mean that Pereira was initiating a takedown, and so off of that heavy snap down you have a guard pull, and so it's a matter of do you consider that snap down initiating a takedown or not?
Yeah.
And I see an argument both ways sometimes.
It
but
looked like Pereira was trying to snap him to his knees, in which case, at least what I saw, I watched it a bunch of times. I was like, that was one of the hardest snap downs of the tournament. I was shocked personally that they did not consider it a pull off of that forward progression from Gutenberg. They didn't, so apparently I'm wrong because they have pretty good refs at the GP most of the time. But it was just very interesting as a viewer to watch like this in the kind of in the same realm of quarterfinals matches where I'm like, why wasn't that scored in ADCC? That's absolutely going to be a negative for a pull or going to be a guard pull. IBJJF, again, different rule set. But it was not. I just thought it was very interesting. Gutenberg looks amazing here. He gets past. He gets to the side control, and then just pops up from side control.
Yeah.
The Kimura looked very, very dominant. Again, Pereira.
Been looking good lately.
Been looking really, really good. Again, I like Pereira made that shift a couple years ago in his game, and I really like seeing him, like the level of activity for the majority of matches and like his tenacity looking for a finish. We'll talk about that more in the next match. Moving on to the semifinals, we had Kainan Duarte defeating Cyborg Abreu. And this was a really kind of interesting...
Yeah, so this is a rematch, which I had to look that up. This was BJJ Bet in 2020.
In the gi.
And Kainan won in the gi there. Or no, yeah, in the gi, but heel hooks were legal. And so, because it was BJJ Bet. Or it wasn't...
No. So Cyborg has a win over Kainan via heel hook. Yeah,
Kainan loses by heel hook. The BJJ Bet, that's what it was. It was BJJ Bet 2020.
Yeah.
Kainan loses.
Have they only ever met once?
Yeah. So
really?
I was surprised about that, and that's why I looked it up.
I knew the heel hook loss because it's like it's the reverse Nicky Rod.
Yeah,
is what I thought. Because it was in the era where it's like Nicky Rod and Kainan were going, and then Kainan loses by a heel hook.
Yeah,
and
he
that
lost
was
a couple in a row, and that's when we were like, is this a kink in Kainan's armor?
He lost to Spriggs, but before that he had lost to Cyborg, and this was I think the first or second notable heel. He had a couple of them actually.
It was after ADCC, the heel hook loss.
After the Lachlan one.
After Lachlan. So, But yeah, so rematch. Kainan pulls early, and Cyborg. This was interesting because, like I think I would call this an error on Cyborg's part.
Yes,
and
absolutely.
so Kainan has double sleeve grips, and Cyborg, like normally, I think the like guidance that you would give as a coach under normal circumstances, if someone has double sleeve grips and you're on your feet, you're standing,
which was Cyborg. He was like he was like bent over Duarte's guard kind of.
Yeah, but yes, and in that situation, if your feet are on the ground and someone has double sleeve grips on you, you almost always want to sit your butt as far back as you can possibly get it to counter the weight that they're pulling forward,
to counter things like the Tomonagi sweeps and balloon sweeps and like lumberjacks. All of those they need to load your weight up by pulling you forward, and so if you're giving them that forward momentum, like you're making it a load for them.
Yeah, and so Cyborg starts off doing that initially, and then Kainan resets his feet, and when he resets his feet, Cyborg tries to like leg pummel a little bit and like high step pass kind of thing.
What
and
I saw
lean forward really
Cyborg
heavy.
doing is what I thought he was going to do is on the reset, he was going to hip switch pass over top of him and like land in like a Sao Paulo variation or like
That looked like that's what he was trying to do.
That's what it looked like he was trying to do. He's like, hey man, I'm just going to blast through your hips here and land on you. And Duarte went, well, if I have enough distance, I can just totally counter this hip switch at this range.
Yeah, and he has the hands. Like you
Yes.
to do what in my maybe Cyborg does this regularly in some way that I don't imagine.
Does to lower skilled guys.
Maybe
I've seen him run through.
but not with the double sleeve grip. Right? He usually has a hand available.
Usually, yeah.
Right? And that's the thing. I think normally
Usually,
in this case, I think what Cyborg did is great when you have at least one hand available that you can collect some cloth at a hip or an underhook with.
Yeah.
And then that allows you to continue the pass even though they have one. But he kind of had both sleeves. And so what it just looked kind of like, it looked weird because Cyborg puts his weight forward and starts switching his hips. And then Kynan just kind of pulls the hands up in the air, and Cyborg doesn't have any hands available anymore, so he has to fall, and he just falls forward because that's the direction his momentum's going, and Kynan gets the sweep off of that, and
He
it just
kind of just like does a variation of like a Yoko Wakare sweep, like a side leg turn
yeah.
sweep.
And Cyborg's match before this went the distance, he was
He was
probably
dominant.
tired. He was
Yeah.
dominant, but he was probably tired. Where Kynan's match was not as aggressive, I think, in the quarterfinals.
Definitely.
And so like it's very, very unusual for Cyborg to do anything that I would look at as from an outside perspective and say that looks like a mistake. And this is one of the very, very few he's so tight normally. And this one looked a little bit like a mistake. And granted, there's possibly something there that I don't know that Kynan took advantage of, and maybe it was the right thing to do, and then I'm just not aware of it. But
it is really interesting though, because you're right. If I think of players that typically like just tend to not make mistakes.
He plays
it's
such a
like
tight game
him
always.
And
Lovato.
Buchecha. Like guys that typically like they'll get beaten in areas.
Sure.
But it's not because they ever like will make a mistake out of position, especially like early career Lovato.
Yeah.
Like that dude was just like pretty bulletproof with his positioning and like his thought process for his actions.
Yes.
Even if they were going to be explosive, and it was interesting.
And
to see
Cyborg's
this go that way.
extremely explosive, but he usually does it from a place where he has dominant grip position and is safe. I think he typically is focusing
He's going
on
to
these
scramble
like,
you when he's already winning to get an even better spot. He's not going to scramble you with the hopes of collecting a better thing in the scramble. That's kind of what one of the hallmarks of Cyborg's game for years is you can watch him like, oh, he's made a scramble. It's like, yeah, he was already kind of winning.
Right.
And then he made you make a mistake in this scramble and then got a further position. He's not a guy like Tonin that will take a bad spot and go, hey man, we're gonna run.
Yeah.
I'm gonna see what I can get. And it's like they look from an outside perspective very
look similar. Yeah.
But if you look at like where and how Cyborg does it, he does it usually when he already has control.
Yeah.
Whereas Tonin does it like in every spot because Tonin will get control in that scramble. So interesting piece there.
So then Cyborg's on the bottom now. He's playing like sort of deep half kind of situation, or trying to play a little bit of a deep half kind of situation. Ends up getting the belt looped underneath Kynan's leg, and then does a really, really nice job kicking Kynan's independent back leg, his free leg out, and then Cyborg's able to stand up into the single, right? And so he does something really interesting. Cyborg does something really smart and interesting here. Is he's got the belt and he switches from the belt to the inside lapel grip to wrap underneath Kynan's leg, because that inside lapel grip is a lot stronger, and then the belt falls off, which is telling about the strength of those two different grips. And so it was really beautiful work by Cyborg to get up into the sweep, and then also that switch was really, really smart. And normally once you make that switch, it's extremely hard to break out of that single, and this was another thing. That's why I'm kind of curious, if Cyborg was feeling okay for this match, because he does another thing in this match that I was unsure about, and I wouldn't say that it's necessarily a mistake, but like it didn't seem like the right thing to me, or it didn't seem like the thing that Cyborg would normally do to me. And normally when Cyborg or anyone is in this single leg position, you have the leg up and it's in between your own legs. You get your own head underneath your opponent's. Right, and so you get your head below their jaw so that you have the lower position, and
you
that's
can battering ram them over if you need to.
Well, it's not even just that. Like, it's impossible for them to start creating distance if your head is underneath their chin, And so you get the dominant head position, you get your forehead in underneath their jaw, and then they can't get that leg out because they can't create distance. And Cyborg sort of casually lets Kynan get the head position. And it didn't seem like it seemed like Cyborg wasn't fighting for it. So he might have been looking for something else or looking for an alternate finish, but he lets Cyborg get the lower head. Cyborg lets Kynan get the lower head position without like putting up a fight for it at all. And then because Kynan now has the lower head position, he's able to square and then donkey kick his leg back and get the leg out, and Cyborg doesn't get the sweep, it was just an interesting exchange. And I was curious why Cyborg didn't really fight too hard for the head position, because he had it initially and he was in a nice tight spot, and then he kind of just...
We know he can wrestle.
Yeah, that's why
we've seen him wrestle.
I'm curious what he was going for with that. But then from there, Kynan pulls guard. Once they're back on their feet, Kynan pulls guard again, and then we just have some guard play till the end of the match. Kynan takes it 2-0.
Yeah, Kynan goes, I'm up now, I'm going to pull, and kind of like not stall, but definitely
he does
not
the Kynan thing.
Yeah,
which is fine. I mean, Kynan plays the smart game, and he gets his point. At least Kynan gets his points in a definitive way that I feel good about before he takes his time to finish out a match. And so, really beautiful work from Kynan.
Cyborg. Those are, I think, for me at least, the two. You had 1, 2, and 3 seeds, which was Kynan. I would put probably Cyborg as your 2 seed, put Gutenberg as your 3 seed. So at least we got to see like that match play out. I was happy for that.
Same.
Moving on to the semifinals on the other side of the bracket, we had Gutenberg Pereira defeating Ryder Zucchi via choke from the back. This was like a variation of a slide choke.
Yeah, this was cool, and so there's some technical things in this particular choke that are worth pointing out. But
it was over the face and teeth completely.
Well, I think yeah.
His mouth was bleeding after.
I don't give a damn anything about the neck to the neck. But so there, to start the match, Zucchi pulls guard, and then Pereira opens pretty cleanly with the feet together, knees tight, sit back, kind of open, and immediately after opening, he clears a leg, or he straightens out a leg, he clears a leg, Zucchi's forced to roll the turtle, and then Pereira jumps on his back instantly.
Roll to turtle.
Oh.
See, not even like the way that Pereira takes the back here is like he's living in another dimension that you're just here with him.
Yeah.
In the middle of the turtle, Gutenberg kind of starts like just a standing like step over, almost like he's going to go to mount, steps up and away, and then just like walks over the turtle and just lands on the back as Zucchi's like coming up to go to the turtle to defend the sweep. It was just this. It was the cut. I call it cutting a guy off at the pass, where it's like if you're more than 2 steps ahead of a guy in a move, you can just intercept like the whole transitional battle you're going to happen and just end on the back or end in mount, or just you can just forego all of that work that you have to do to get through someone's guard or position and go, I just took his back.
Yeah.
And that's what happened. He just cuts him off at the pass for the turtle battle that he was about to make happen.
He saw that turtle coming from light years away and was able to move into position. He doesn't actually get the back all the way. He gets a single hook in.
Yeah. It was close.
He was close a couple times. They were rolling around a little bit, and he was close a couple times. But he also didn't necessarily...
That was the coolest transition of the weekend for me, though.
Yeah, it was cool.
That back take of just like, Jesus, this is why we love Gutenberg Pereira when he's like active, because he does shit like this.
Yeah. But so he only has one hook in, and what Pereira does is... He actually, at a certain point, he was trying to get the back to get the points, and I think he realized that he was able to feed Zucchi's lapel across to the far hand. And what's really important about this is if you're watching this, I think we're seeing a lot more submissions happen from only one hook, and it's like a leg triangle kind of situation when you're on the back and a little bit off to the side. But I think there, it's really important, and this might seem obvious to people that have been playing the game a long time, but if you're not, or you're not playing this position much, you have to be choking from the choke has to be coming from the arm opposite the leg that you have. So if I'm on your back and I have your right leg locked into a leg triangle, I have to be choking you with my left arm. Mm-hmm. Right?
It sounds choke to the same side. I mean,
it seems obvious, but like
normally in like 90+% of scenarios, you can't loop your same side arm because you don't have control of their body
Yes.
to turn. And so you can do it and you can make it work, obviously.
And you can hit short chokes and lapel chokes off of this position. Really nice and easy. And, so Zucchi does a nice job getting his back flat to the mat, but Pedetta had already fed the lapel through. It's over Zucchi's face. Nobody gives a shit. And then Pedetta finishes this choke with Zucchi's
malice
face in
and
there.
anger.
But it's also a version of this choke that I really like to see because it's not super commonly used, but it's I'm actually not even sure what we would call it, but you have the lapel choke across and then you underhook the near side arm and then slide your hand behind their head to put forward pressure on their head into the choke.
This is always the choke that I teach because it looks the coolest when you finish.
It does look cool when you finish.
Specifically, once a semester at the club that I teach at, I will show this choke because it looks cool.
It's also really effective.
It's a great choke, and also you can do it from the underhook. So you
Yes.
essentially trap their arm in. You prevent the movement from the other side of the body.
Yeah.
If you have full hooks in, it's great. If you have one hook in, you can still do it. I know this grip as either a assassin finish. Or
I've heard
like
that
or like a
before.
hitman finish because
Yeah.
you have your hand like behind their head.
Yeah.
I think there's also I think it's technically termed a Japanese finish.
Yeah.
I think
Well,
it's technically
whatever we
termed
want
for
to
it.
call it, I think it's the ideal finish from this leg triangle, outside leg
Yeah.
triangle, like half back take in
Well, 'cause
kind of position.
It gives you the power to slide your top hand behind the head through
And also
make
controls-
the front hand tighter as a result because when you have that front hand grip, you are kind of limited by how hard you can kind of pull it over by the strength of your arm.
Yeah.
If you throw your own hand as an anchor point, your hand behind their head, you can basically put additional pressure into the choking hand by just holding the choking hand and using your other hand to push the head into it essentially.
And not only that, like, yes, that is absolutely essential piece of this, but it also allows you to control the inside shoulder while you do that.
Yeah.
And so there's a lot of other ways that we could potentially put that pressure on, but not many of them control the inside shoulder. And so in several of those cases, the person's still going to have the opportunity to roll into the choke, but this locks that shoulder into place so that they can't roll into the choke.
you kind of end up in a half in like a body crucifix.
Yeah. I think the ideal way to finish a person in the gi from that position, and it was nice to see.
Yeah. Also, again, one of the reasons we love Gutenberg Pedetta. In the finals, we get Kynan Duarte versus Gutenberg Pedetta. This is Kynan taking it via points 2-0.
Yep.
It's a tilt sweep.
Yeah, it
Really,
was
it's a tilt sweep. It's kind of a similar thing that he hit on Cyborg.
It is.
Earlier.
It is. I like his use of the De La Riva, the hook here, though.
Yeah.
Like that was the difference between this and the one with Cyborg. Here, he also has double sleeve. Kynan also gets double sleeves, but this time, Pedetta sort of knee high, like one knee up, one knee on the mat, like squats. Which is a really common position, and this is like a classic De La Riva sweep, right? And Kynan gets the De La Riva hook in on that knee that's up, uses that to extend Pedetta, to create that distance, move Pedetta's hips away while pulling forward with the hands to get that sort of angle that we want. And then he uses his free leg that's not on the De La Riva hook just to kind of bump Pedetta's outside hip over and then finishes the sweep.
It doesn't take
really
much
nice.
because he has control of the hands and arms. Like, once you get the hips moving there, you can just sort of... The dog is hitting the table. You can just sort of tilt him over, and then Kynan comes up on the sweep, gets his 2 points, and then sort of hangs out for a little bit.
I actually wanted to talk about this too because both of these guys do something that I think hobbyist jiu-jitsu lacks. And so people that listen to the show that aren't trying to be world competitors, which I think is, a lot of us.
Pretty much most of the people that listen to the show.
Yeah, right. And so...
If you're a world level guy and you listen to the show, DM me. I'll send you a patch.
That sounds great. But so, I think one of the things that people do in the gym a lot, and I see this everywhere that I train, I try to train whenever I travel, and I see it all the time, is that, like, let's say you hit a really nice technique on me, Maine, and I'm swept. It's happened. My ass is on the mat. There is this respect that happens on the mats, in like gyms and more hobby associated gyms.
And I didn't know where you were going with this. I now know where you're going with this.
Once my hips hit the mat, I'm like, hey, nice technique, and then you get the sweep.
And then the guy plays from guard or whatever position he ends up in, and then you start that. You typically don't have I'm a die before I give you this sweep.
And I want that to happen more. I encourage it in my students. I encourage everyone to do it. I would rather I would rather you kill me than concede a sweep. Like once my hips hit the mat, that is 25% of the sweep for you, because I will do everything in my power to not let those points be scored. And I feel like you don't see this at the highest levels very often, because you typically don't get the sweep unless people are able to follow up into tight positions. But you see it at lower levels often, where people have really good sweeps. And then if the other person just says, no, I'm not going to let you finish this, then they can't. And it happens a lot.
Best example of this, watch ADCC trials. Watch like round 2 or 3 to like the best of 16.
Yep.
Or like maybe even like 32. You'll see a bunch of guys that run up a bunch of guys that kind of train a little bit more in rooms like that, versus the guys at the world level, where you'll see like maybe that guy has really good sweeping technique, and then he'll get 90% through, and then the guy with the name will go, nah. And just choose not to have it happen. And that's the best example I can say of that particular thing you're talking about.
And what was interesting about this sweep that Kynan hit here is it is one of the very few cases where, Kynan hits the sweep, it was very clear that Pedetta was like, no, I'm not letting you have this. And Kynan had to work really hard to keep Pedetta's hips on the mat. And he was able to do it. But I feel like a lot of times at the highest levels, you see these situations where if Kynan does get this sweep, he's either tight on the finish or Pedetta is hitting his ass and is up already. So you don't get to see the struggle.
Yeah.
And there is like a 10 second period of real struggle here that's worth watching. And it was interesting to me that's the thing that I think about a lot for people, is that you don't have to concede to good technique to the first half of good technique. You can make people go all the way through, especially for sweeps and takedowns and things like that. And this was an interesting place to see that.
With guys you teach, it's just like, hey man, finish it. Like make you turn me over all the way and like earn the sweep.
Keep me down.
Keep me down and prevent. If I don't want this to happen halfway through.
It's a drill that I do with people a lot, where I will say, on the bottom, you are drilling the sweep. Once you are swept on the top, you're live and don't let them finish. Yeah. Just so you get a feel
the drill
for this.
Through. Yeah. I think it's a good teaching tool. And one I've kind of brought and bring into more of my classes, after talking to you a lot about that.
You see that here really nicely. I love it.
Because between two high-level guys like this, it's not a fight that you see very, very frequently.
I feel like it happens every time, but it happens quick.
Yeah.
This was a case where
it's not protracted.
Yeah, this is the case where it extended a bit, and it was really interesting.
And again, it's a finals for the Absolute GP, so it's where I would love to see you, because the technique and the margins are so small. Yeah. Like, guys are fighting for that last inch, and it makes for exciting and fun jiu-jitsu.
And so Kynan ends up on top with this. Pedetta's playing some single leg X and some lapel stuff, and I think we see this every once in a while. We've seen lapel things sort of become a little bit on the edge of being meta and then fall out, and some people are really good at them, some aren't. But
I think Keenan's retirement, did a lot more against that. Then you didn't have a guy that was at the forefront in all like the hobbies, like pushing it. Sure. And you had a lot of guys that now were at the brown belt and purple belt level that sort of were pushing it on their own.
Yeah.
And you watched Keenan kind of struggle, at the highest levels with it.
We saw it with Keenan too. But the issue that I think a lot of people run into it with like playing some of these lapel guards is that if I on top am not incentivized to push the pace, it is hard to finish things. If I want to stall while in a lapel guard and I have an opportunity to do that within that rule set, I will stall.
Because and the interesting thing, I've watched it more as more guys have played lapel guard, like on me personally, and then in all the match footage that we've looked at on this show, is a guy has to commit his hands to really strong grips in lapel guards. And he can make switches, but it is very hard to ever have your hands in a way where you can drag someone out across the center line, typically in lapel guards. And so you have an inside position. If a guy has good balance, which pretty much everyone does at the highest levels, you're limited in your ability to turn a guy and knock a guy over to the side unless you can get him in a very, very complicated lapel guard. And even Keenan talks about those taking like multiple minutes to set up. With kind of the increasing frequency of stalling penalties, and guys knowing the game even better than they have ever before, I think we're seeing a difficulty in guys setting up those lapel guards with the outside positions for the hands, where they even have the opportunity to sweep people with really good balance.
Yeah, and I think we see that here with Pereira because we actually get two double stalling calls on this, which is legit.
Yeah,
but they're largely because Pereira is playing, not even really complicated lapel guards. They're just tight enough where Kainen's like, I'm not going to put weight forward into this because that's how you use this thing against me, and so I'm gonna keep my balance, stay tight. Two double stalling calls. Pereira realizes that he can't do that anymore and has to release those guards. Kainen moves, he drops his hip to like look for a straight ankle, but I also think that he kind of thought Pereira was going to stand up with it. And Pereira jumps up, and it looked like he was anticipating it.
This was like a funny little, I'm going to try to play the meta of what I think you're going to do here.
Yeah.
And both guys took a gamble. So, small pause to the show. This is the first time, so we just lost power in the studio here, and it is very funny to me because we just hit the 5-year anniversary of the show. We're back. We're gonna go back to the discussion of the finals match here in a second, but I want to talk about this because it's never happened before. We've never lost power mid-recording, so the camera's on battery power, luckily, and this is why, for 5 years, I've done this show on a laptop. Because just in case something happens, the laptop goes, oh, that's weird, all the audio equipment cuts out. The laptop's still good. We still have the first 35 minutes of the show because I do it on a laptop. And this is why I love
So we don't have to repeat all of that conversation.
Yeah, because it was going to be gone.
Because Maine thought 5 years ago to record a show on a laptop instead of a desktop.
Yep. And we've done it across the country, and so it's great. And I'm gonna get a new laptop. This laptop has now earned it, and it's good. If we do happen to lose power again and the show gets wonky, just be prepared for like another cut later. Hopefully it doesn't happen, but we lost power once, and that's really rare here. So it is what it is. So moving on, I just think it's hilarious. 5-year anniversary, almost pretty much exactly the 5-year anniversary of the show. Never happened during live recording. So
first time for everything.
First time for everything. So
jumping back into Kainen and Pereira.
It was very funny to see that kind of gamble with the footlock happen in real time because it's very you got to watch Duarte and Pereira go, I think you're gonna do this, and both got to play off of like what the other was thinking about countering what they were watching.
I don't know if I fully agree with that. I think that Kainen was sick of Pereira's shit, and I think that Kainen knew that Pereira was gonna try to come up if he dropped back, right? That's the obvious thing for Kainen to do because Kainen really didn't look like he was committing on the ankle lock much.
No, that's what I mean.
He sat to his butt.
He did it as a bait to force Pereira to stand.
Yes.
And Pereira was like, well, I have to stand here because he's sitting, so I do have the opportunity for 2 points here because in this rule set, if you sit back and they come up, you get 2. So I have to take the bait because I am down 2. And Duarte was like, I know you have to take the bait, so I'm going to play you off of that.
That is what I think happened. But Kainen, I think the reason that I think Kainen was sort of aware of how this was going to go and was anticipating, not just because he wasn't like really hard on the ankle or because of how quickly he responded, but it was mostly because when they both stand up, Kainen has what is the clear dominant position.
Oh, absolutely.
Right? And so they stand up into this double single situation. Pereira grabs Kainen's ankle on his way up. Kainen holds onto the ankle that he had. But the position that they land in, the single that Pereira is holding is behind his leg. So he does have Kainen's leg up, but Kainen has tucked his foot sort of underneath Pereira's hamstring.
Yeah.
So his leg is behind Pereira, and Pereira's leg is in front of Kainen. And so Pereira's not really going to be able to take Kainen down with that leg because he's got to reach in underneath in between his own legs to hold on to it.
It's not a very strong grip to like be able to move the leg around very
well. No. And so he's going to lose that standing battle, and then Kainen is able to take advantage of it. He ends up almost taking the back and almost passing off of the sort of sweep situation.
He sits in what I call my notes. A half back, half Nelson crucifix is sort of what he sits in for. He sat there so long, I thought he was going to get a stalling call.
Yeah.
Again. And it was a weird position because Pereira's kind of like stuck there, and Duarte's like, I'm very happy to sit here till as long as I need to because I'm in a dominant position almost, but like I'm in a position where I still can be countered. But if I hang out here, there's not a lot of options that Gutenberg has out of this position. So it was, again, you got to watch Kainen like purposefully stall and I hate when most people do it, but like with Duarte, I can see the pathway to victory, and he's usually in interesting enough spots and done enough where I'm okay with it.
Yeah.
And I don't know why.
I'm more forgiving of it for Kynan than anyone else.
Might just because I like Kynan, which I think might be again. We are not unbiased journalists. Like I like certain guys, I'm not as much a fan of other guys. For the majority, we talk about the good techniques we like to see. But I like Duarte. He gave me a really good interview. Did not clarify pronunciation of his name.
I like his jiu-jitsu. So
I do too.
But after an almost back take and almost pass, we end up back with Pereira in guard, Kynan on top. The match runs out. Kynan takes it 2-0. There were some really interesting technical things done in this match. I thought it was a good match. It was a nice finals for a GP.
Fun match. Again, I like when GP finals end like this, where you see, as much as I'm not a fan of the IBJJF rule set, I do like when you see kind of the flavors of a rule set on display in a major final of like, hey, this is what kind of separates the rule set from other rule sets. It doesn't look like every generic, or not generic, but every other grappling rule set. Although I'm not the biggest fan of this rule set overall, I do appreciate when athletes show off the flavor of a rule set in a finals.
Well, I also think that a key feature here is that the GP's mat space, don't quote me on this because I could be wrong. I am pretty sure the GP's mat space is significantly larger than your major's mat space. And the rules issues that we have, the thing that we complain about on this show the most when we're talking about IBJJF.
No, I was like, what do we complain about? That could be a long list.
I'm narrowing. The thing that we complain about the most when we're talking about IBJJF rules is the mats, the mat out of bounds play and the resets and all this shit that happens on the edge of the mat, and you don't get that as much. I think you see that so much at majors because the mats are small, and they should really just take the finals and reset the mats for the majors put them like
Black Belt. The game has changed where they need and use more mat space for the techniques at the high, especially for the big guys, man. Especially for the big grapplers. Like,
I mean,
man,
I get more frustrated.
You have the money.
Yeah.
You have the venue spaces. Like, I've never been to a venue where it's like, oh, the mats are edge to edge of the venue. It's like, give me an extra 40% mat space.
Or you could even, they could even set up the mats in a way. Like, there are things that smart people can do to have different colored sections of the mat so that you don't even have to change the mats.
We've talked about this a lot.
Right? So, but you don't see that at the GP. We saw zero shitty resets. Well, there were some resets that you were like, oh, that sucks that they had to reset there. But I was not angry about any of the resets.
We didn't see any shitty resets.
We didn't see people rolling out of bounds to get out of submissions and getting a penalty for it or a point. Like it.
Right.
A lot of the rules, things that you don't like about IBJJF don't happen as much at the GPs, and I think a lot of it is because of the mat space. And so
I think it's that. Also, it's the caliber of athlete too. So there is two sides of that coin.
Kynan Pereira is easily something that we could see in an absolute finals, and we would probably be freaking annoyed about the mat space at a world's finals. So like,
because even here they were closer to the edge.
Sure.
They say to that far side edge, the majority of kind of these sequences. And towards the end,
but the issue is getting to the mat. A lot of times, I think when you're at the mat size at Worlds or what we see at Worlds, and to be honest, I'm not even really sure how much bigger the mats are at the GPs, and maybe it's something else that's happening, but
they seem much bigger.
But a lot of times at Worlds, the annoying thing is people getting to the mat. You have these like takedown battles that just push
don't
out,
really
push out,
result
push out,
in
push
much
out.
for long periods of time. You don't get to see the actual mat work that is sort of the hallmark of what the sport we watch and do is.
So, these semifinals and finals matches were really good for the GP, I thought.
Yep.
Talk about some of the super fights.
Talk about some of the super fights. Where do you want to talk about? What do you want to start with here?
I just kind of have them in random order in my notes.
That's why I asked where you wanted to start, Zach, because I knew what order you had them in.
So the super fight matches here were AOJ against other people.
Pretty much.
Like, I don't understand exactly how the matchups happened, but just every super fight was almost all the super fights were AOJ people. Let's start with Jessica Khan versus Hernandez. Here, that was just the first one in my notes in random order.
That's a good enough place to start. Khan's up 17-0 when she gets the violent arm lock finish.
Yeah, it was
a flavor of the match. There's a lot that happens here, but it's really Khan showing off her game.
Yeah, it was some double pulls. Hernandez takes bottom position somehow, which was like really questionable. I have no idea how she ended up with bottom position, but she did apparently. Khan explodes to the top and then just keeps exploding into new positions. Passes off of her sweep.
Points.
Yeah, mount. Well, I think back, then mount,
mount.
then back mount, side mount, triangle
Yep.
in there somewhere, right?
Really, really good. That's so you have more.
Nope, that's
positional
basically
pieces.
it. I just
that was the match.
Yeah.
Really interesting fight. I wish again. The one thing that annoyed me is, for both this event and for finishers, is they need another camera on the other side of the mat.
Yeah,
because we
nice.
had a lot of finishes that were back facing the camera, which is really hard to like. You miss the hand positioning, the grip positioning, and like the faces of the athletes because that'll tell you so much as well. This finish was a really cool triangle, and then violin arm locks over the top, and you can see the extension and the pressure on the arm. The violin arm lock is the arm lock, the straight arm lock where their arm is trapped on your neck, and the arm crunch, I think Gordon calls it like sumageishi or something, which isn't technically the Japanese correct term for it, but
who cares? But what's important about this is she does it on the arm that is outside of the triangle. That is my favorite place to do it as well.
Oh yeah.
This is a wonderful fin. I mean, you can sort of get it on the inside arm sometimes, but
it's just hard.
It's
you
a
have
nice thing.
You have the regular arm bar if you do it on that arm, so you don't ever really need to do it on that arm.
Well, depending on where they put it, it doesn't matter. But the nice thing about this is it can be easy to get if people are defending the triangle properly. And it was a really nice finish. She collects the underhook on that arm and then straightens it out, gets that violent arm lock after a really dominant performance. These two, the commentators had talked about these two coming up together at the colored belts and having some battles. Khan usually taking the win in them, but I think this was a sort of a historic a match to build on the history of these two over time.
Which I appreciate. So
I can appreciate that.
defeats Coyote Hernandez via violin arm lock.
Yep.
Next match, what you got?
The silliest frickin' match of the entire night.
I think I know what you're talking about.
I'm not even talking about the silliness in the match. I'm talking about this. Why would you ever put this match on?
Okay, I know what you're talking about.
On this grand stage, we have Jonathan Alves and Souza.
Roosevelt Souza. So I looked. I started this match, and I immediately. So I sometimes I'll watch the intro, sometimes I'll tab through them because I didn't watch this live. I didn't have a chance to. I tabbed through, and then I got into the first position, and I went, "Wait a second. These guys are very different weight classes."
Yeah.
And I tabbed back.
Why was this a thing?
I don't know. So my thought was this might have been a punishment for Jonathan Alves for the last GP where he played a lot of 50-50, and then they got in him and Mergali and AOJ, and everyone got into it, and they were like, okay, show us you can do it. That is my I wrote the weights down my notes. Jonathan Alves was 175 pounds.
5'8". 175 is Jonathan Alves.
Which is like close to my height, about 25 pounds bigger.
Jonathan Alves, 5'8", 175. Roosevelt Souza, 6'4", 261. He is almost 100 pounds.
Zach,
just under 90 pounds more and 6 inches taller.
Zach, that is functionally, if anyone watches on the YouTube video, that is functionally Zach and myself's size difference.
Yeah.
And
just about.
Zach has almost 100 pounds on me. It's like that is. It was comical, and
to see that, like, this is a kind of a funny thing. Like, your 175 pounder jumps into the Absolute at Worlds. You have Mikey versus Seif, and like you get some of these weird things.
Mikey
and then
versus Ali.
Yeah, or Mikey versus Ali, and you get these things, and you're like, huh, this is interesting. But it obviously happened because this small person jumped into the Absolute.
Right.
This was a planned match. What happened? How does this?
I don't know.
In the end, though, Jonathan puts up a better fight than I would have thought. Look at
Jonathan put up the fight I expected. Jonathan is, for all of my problems with the game and the utilization of the rule set, which I'm not a huge fan of, and some of his tactics, he is an amazing world-class player. This is the performance that I expected him to put up. I was actually more impressed with Roosevelt Souza for just like you just shook your head. Yeah. The consistency of like unrelenting pressure the whole time and not letting Alves at any point in time get any part of his game really going.
Yeah, it can be really so this is coming from a guy on the larger side. It can be really challenging to maintain dominant position on smaller people. It's easier to get to it, but if you have a high level athlete for me, I'm about 240. If I have a high level guy at 170, my nightmare scenario on the mats is like a college wrestler that weighs 180. Because, like, I will be able to pass pretty regularly, but I will almost never be able to hold that pass on someone that's, like, really athletic and about that 170 to 80 size, because there's holes that my big-ass leg is going to make, and tiny people's limbs can fit in those holes easier. And so, like, I understand that Souza's not able to, like, maintain side control on Jonathan. Jonathan's really good, and there's this weird size difference thing that I think people look down on, like might... Right, you don't feel bad for the bigger guy, but at the same time, like
never, Zach.
Jonathan,
as a tiny small man,
I
never.
know.
I've never once felt bad for.
But
a
I'm
small
saying, like,
man.
it's not surprising that he's not able to hold these dominant positions
No,
for very long. But he really
technically.
passed once. I was surprised that he didn't pass more. I was still, I guess, a little surprised that Jonathan took it the distance.
Yeah.
You know, I think, and Souza's an incredible player, and that's what I'm saying. I'm not saying this to knock Roosevelt Souza. Roosevelt Souza is a world class, ultra heavyweight, has put on incredible performances over and over again. I'm saying that I am impressed that Jonathan only got passed once and didn't get tapped in this match. Like, this is
because Souza absolutely looked ready. Like, Souza looked ready. What I appreciated about this is Souza looked ready to impose this game forever.
Yeah.
Like, he looked like, I'm going to work at a pace that I can maintain and keep pressuring into you. And you saw Alves, like, you saw how hard Jonathan Alves was working. Even at the end, again, to Alves' credit, at the end, when he needs to do something, he will explode out and, like, make a move.
Yeah.
Goes for an omoplata. Like, Roosevelt Souza goes, I am 100 pounds bigger, man. Lifts him up, like Clark Gracie style.
Yeah.
And just kind of shucks. And it was just a weird... It was an extremely weird match to happen. And I don't know if there was a replacement or, like, I don't remember.
I have no
but
idea.
This was... The IBJJF GP typically never has these kind of matches. It was very odd to see. And so in an IBJJF that's very strict and, like, no fun and, like, good grappling, it was a little refreshing to see a match that was just like, this is a weird match that I'm not sure should be happening on this stage. But it broke me from my like IBJJF, this is how we do it, and I actually really did enjoy, like, watching, like, how is Alves going to deal with him?
I guess that's right. If this was like, I know ADCC doesn't do events like this, but if this was like an ADCC event and then we had this exact same match, I'd be like, okay, that makes sense. ADCC has, like, a history of throwing one little guy into
versus
right. Or this year, I'm blanking on his name.
Fabricio
Andre in, right?
Victor
Hugo. Like, like, ADCC does things like that, and it's funny, and we all like it. And so, like, I wouldn't be surprised if this was them. It's strange for IBJJF to do this, because they seem a little more rigid in their matchup choices.
They are the no fun police for the sport. So,
anyways, Souza takes that on a pass.
3 points.
Impressive work by Alves for hanging in as long as he did, and really putting up an incredibly defensive fight. Like, it was really nice.
Yeah. It was very fun. I think this is the IBJJF giving one to Mergali and going and giving Alves a tough match.
I don't know.
But
they don't like Mergali.
Dude, they don't like a lot of people.
Yeah, that's
You're
true.
finding that out recently.
Like a lot of people.
Moving on to the next match, we had Andy Murasaki versus Mateus Rodriguez.
Murasaki's AOJ or is he Atos?
Definitely one of those two things, Zach.
Damn it.
Definitely.
I think this might be the one match that didn't have an AOJ guy, because I think Andy Murasaki is Atos.
Is he Atos?
I think so.
Because he was one of those guys that was always, like, a cross to me.
Yeah.
And he was, like, always the float. And when the AOJ and Atos actually split, like actually a couple years ago, 3 years ago, I always forget where Murasaki is. And
I'm looking it up.
I should not. I'm stalling for time, Zach. I'm giving you time to work. I always forget where he worked. This match was it was 2-0 for Murasaki, and there's I'll let you talk about the beginning of the match.
Atos.
He's Atos. There was a protracted single leg battle.
This was silly. This is the second silliest thing in the entire event.
So I have some history for
What happened?
Some history for me we train at a gym that is run by and owned by a wrestler who speaks very highly, runs wrestling programs. There's wrestling programs in the gym.
He has been a high school wrestling coach for as long as longer than he's been doing BJJ.
Yeah, like 15 years. Like, I don't know, a long time. Yeah. And so wrestling is held to a very high prestige at our gym, even though I'm a dog shit wrestler. This match had 4 minutes, if not more.
It was weird.
Of Rodriguez holding Andy Murasaki in a single leg and doing jiu-jitsu. And we watched as, like, I was like, is he really going to hold? Like, it was such a wild exchange to see for two guys on this super high level like these. Like, I don't understand why they decided to play in this position in this way for so long, to the point where Andy Murasaki started countering takedown attempts. And this was aside from the Gutenberg Pereira back take earlier, this was the wildest sequence that I saw in the GP. Was at one point, Mateus Rodriguez has Andy Murasaki in a modified single leg with like a grip on the lapel, kind of under, and he's holding the leg up. His head is far enough outside where he has no body contact with his head from Murasaki, and he's kind of bent over. And he holds this position for minutes.
4 minutes. It's 4 minutes.
Well, no, until the sequence happens, I think it's about maybe 3 minutes,
okay.
maybe 2 minutes. And Andy Murasaki goes, he's standing on one leg. He's been standing on one leg for a long time. He drops to a knee. He pulls his leg partially out, and then he goes to his knees, and he switches, and he grabs his own like single leg variation on Rodriguez and almost gets him down. Like, he counters single legged out of a standing single leg, and then he did it again. And
the second time he did something a little bit different.
It was a variation. The first one, the camera angle was perfect, so you can see like what he did. Like, I have never seen someone do this in jiu-jitsu ever. It may be a wrestling thing. It may be a thing.
We saw an attempt of it. I think Cade tried it at ADCC.
But I've never seen someone like actually do it. Like, actually take a single leg.
Well, the second one is not. He didn't.
No, but the first one, where it's like you're in a single leg, you drop to a knee, you pull the leg partially out, you come back up, and you get their single leg, from being in a single leg. It was the wildest Uno reverse card shit that I have seen in a long time.
It was weird. And that can work. It can work. High-level wrestlers will do it once in a while. But no, it didn't work at the end of this.
Yeah.
It was a different thing at the end of this. At the end of this, Murasaki attempts a sort of, from what I saw, it looked like Murasaki kind of half-assed attempted sacrifice roll through that you can hit off the single. There is a number of ways that you can do it. You grab in gi, a lot of times you grab the person's back, belt, lapel, or cloth on the back.
It's an old
you try to pull them forward.
Judo thing when you could still.
It's also a wrestling thing you can do.
Well, when you have the fabric, it's old school. I know it. I learned it from judo because when you could still do leg grabs in judo, 2007.
Sure.
There's a bunch of outside variations on the grips of the pants, and you get a lot of these backwards throws off of leg entries. And so I've seen it in old school judo footage.
And so Murasaki sort of goes for that, where like his leg is still in between Mateus' legs, and so he has a little bit of leverage with that leg to sort of elevate Mateus' hips. He sits his butt down and sort of pulls back. Mateus does a nice job defending that, though, by dropping his ass down, because if you drop your ass down to defend against that sacrifice throw, then that elevation doesn't happen from the leg, and you never get the roll through throw. But in sitting himself back like that, because Murasaki didn't really fully commit to it.
No.
And so without Murasaki really fully committing to it, when he sits his butt down, it makes it so that Murasaki can then stand up himself. And what that allows is that Murasaki can now plant the foot that was held up in the single. Because because Mateus is low, he had to drop himself really low in order to defend this roll through. Murasaki never really commit to it, so he's able to stand up instantly, and so he stands up right away. But Mateus is still leaning over and he's still low, and so he's not picking the leg up. So Murasaki's able to get that foot on the mat, and once that foot's on the mat, then he grabs the lapel and sort of just yeets him down to the mat. And like the weirdest, you are below me, and now like. Physically, you are in a position lower than I am, and so I will just continue driving you down in this. It was really nice play. I don't know how much of that was planned.
It didn't look
very planned, but it
looked like a thing where it's like, I know that this is here, so I'm a freak athlete. I'm just gonna try to do it. I mean, that's what it looked like. And these are some of my favorite things to watch in jiu-jitsu, where you just see a freak athlete go, I'm gonna try it.
Yeah.
And
there was
have enough
30
body
seconds left.
Yeah.
And,
30 seconds left. He tries it again. The fucking counter single leg. What the actual fuck is my actual note for this in the notes this week?
Yeah, it was an interesting exchange, and Murasaki gets the 2 for it. Yeah, Murasaki gets the 2 for
There's other pieces that happened in the match, but that was the piece of the match that was just, it was very interesting to see. I've never seen a match like that, or I've seen it happens every couple years. We've talked about a couple of them on the show where someone holds a single leg for
4 minutes.
For a couple minutes.
And like it was weird because he also, the weirdest thing about it for me was not that he held it for 4 minutes, but that Mateus was just seemed kind of content to continue holding it. Like he wasn't really.
I couldn't tell what he wanted.
Yeah, I couldn't. I don't know what he was trying to
avoid from Murasaki. Like that's what it's like. I didn't know what the game plan. Usually, you can we watch a lot of jiu-jitsu. We've watched a lot of jiu-jitsu for a lot of years. I can watch a match and kind of figure out where a guy's going, what's he thinking about. I really couldn't figure out what the hang-up were, like where he wanted to go here, which maybe is why he stood there for so long.
Yeah, maybe he didn't know where he wanted to go from there. It was strange.
It was a very interesting match, but it gave us those 2 wild sequences that I really enjoyed. Did. So, but definitely go back and watch. Just honestly, watch 4 minutes of this because it is interesting, and it is interesting enough jiu-jitsu that's uncommon. It's worth 4 minutes of your time to go back and watch the last 4 minutes of the match.
It was interesting for sure.
Next match, we had Jonathan Gracie defeating Sergio Reyes 16-4. This is the second match that had a pretty substantial point deficit on it.
This one wasn't. So the Jessica Khan match was an extremely dominant performance. I don't think Rios was dominated in the same way. I think that Jonathan he was in it. He scored himself, but also even when he was losing, he wasn't like held in mount for a long time or something like that. Like he got his back taken, he got mounted. It was enough to get the points, but within a couple seconds of the points being scored, he was out of those positions.
Yeah.
So like Rios, I thought, put up a really good fight here. It was an interesting match. Janatis was really putting on a very good technical performance. Mm-hmm. That is why Rios lost, but it was very much a situation where I don't think the points tell you the full story of the match because the points make it look like this was a blowout, and Rios was hanging in there pretty. I mean, I don't think he was going to win at any. No. There was no point where I was like, oh, Rios might win this, but he wasn't getting outclassed in any way.
He wasn't ever
looked
out
good.
Of it. Other than the points on the board.
Yeah.
Really. And it was like, oh, he's still in this match, very much in this match, but Jonatas just continues to kind of score, but not without like opposition. He's just kind of like one beat ahead in the places he would score. And so that was that match. Jonatas Gracie takes that 16-4. Yep. We also had Eduardo Garazzo defeating Zak Kana via 3-1 on points. And that does it for the IBJJF GP. Again, I like that the IBJJF is paying out some of their top athletes. Again, we tend to not be super complimentary of a lot of the practices of the IBJJF and a lot of the rules, but I do appreciate that they are putting money back into the hands of the pros on that side, and I want to support like the athletes getting paid. That's one of the kind of tenets of this show.
And the GP is the way that they do that.
Yep, the GP is the way they do that. The very occasional pro events like the New York Pro they used to run, like they do a couple of them. I would love to see the IBJJF continue to put on more pro-level events and highlight their talent on a bigger mat stage and give those athletes a professional platform to contend and compete in, not just in their amateur tournaments.
Yeah, I agree.
It would be cool to see that. Again, it moves the sport to becoming more professional. Moving on to the Finishers 17. I was just at this gym last week at the Craig's Jones seminar, so it was very funny because we caught a bunch of events in their new facility, which it's not really a new facility at this point. And I had not got a chance to go up there. And so now it's very funny. I'm looking, it's just there. I know exactly like the orientation of the camera and where everything was. It was very nice to be in a space. And then immediately watch an event broadcast in a space that I just was in. Like, oh yeah, I know. Like it gave me a sense of warmth. It's like, oh, I know where this is. So that was nice. We had a couple of women's super fights on here for title fights. Talk about those briefly, probably at the end. Let's talk about the bracket. This was a stacked bracket.
Yeah,
both Corbray brothers,
who just won Pan Ams. Pan Ams.
Nogi Pan Ams.
And
I was very happy that they were on opposite sides of the bracket.
Yeah.
I was like, I hope they don't put these guys on the same sides of the bracket. Like, that's just cruel. We've seen it happen before, but it's
I don't know.
Promoters do a good job of doing that.
I would have rather them been on the same side of the bracket because that's how I like bracketing done. But I also, it worked out really well that they did not end up in the finals against each other, because that would have been for the two of them, maybe they go at it. Maybe that'd be cool.
That would have been a great final. Then a Cade and Ty finals match.
Assuming that they really go at it, like they probably would. I mean, we know these guys a little bit. They're local, and they probably would have. So maybe it would have been cool. But
so let's talk about. I'll run through. We'll run through the first couple of rounds. I'll run through the first and second round, and then we can talk about the semifinals and the finals, because we're already an hour in at this point.
Yeah.
So we had Gavin Corbray defeating Devin Vogel via heel hook. It goes omoplata, triangle, belly on ankle lock, and then heel hook, all in 30 seconds. Kind of gives you, if you're not familiar with the Corbray brothers, kind of gives you a flavor for their style. And the style coming out of standard.
This is Gavin.
Yeah.
DeAndre plays a little bit different.
A little bit safer of a game.
Gavin is guns a-blazing, and I fucking love it.
Dude goes. We've commentated a bunch of his stuff for Copa Virginia before, and that's cool. They're coming to Maryland, Copa Maryland. Yeah. So there's going to be a local, so I can't wait to go to that and have our guys at that one. We had Jet Thompson defeating Billy Tiger via heel hook. We had David Garcia defeating Mateus Barista via rear naked choke. David Stoley defeating Travis Sturpist via heel hook. Sid Travallo defeated Randy Baker in an armbar in overtime. DeAndre Corbray defeated Jonathan Lopez via back triangle armbar. Looked really good doing it. Yeah. We had Ben 80 defeating Josh Flores via side triangle. Again, listen to all the names in this bracket. Yeah. We previewed it a little bit last week. This was a stacked bracket. We had Fabian Ramirez defeating Quinn Payeur via Z-Lock, the exact same Z-Lock that we saw Joseph Chen hit on Who's Number One last week. Given that's a technique that I'm not super familiar with, this might be just kind of how you hit the Z-Lock, but it is very funny to see that same double outside control and then threading the leg over for that Z-Lock that we saw last week, and Ramirez takes that. Next, we were now into the second round, so we went from the round of 16 to the round of 8. Gavin Corbray, that's the word I'm looking for.
Quarterfinals.
Gavin Corbray defeats Jeff Thompson via Aoki lock. David Stoley defeats David Garcia via rear naked choke. DeAndre Corbray defeats Sid Travallo via armbar. Fabian Ramirez defeats Ben 80 versus rear naked choke in overtime. Love that we're seeing a lot of finishes. Yeah. Again, especially from the finisher brackets kind of consistently have gotten more and more stacked. And it's really cool that we're seeing, again, we're not the biggest fans of overtime, so I do appreciate when we're seeing more and more guys finishing regulation.
Make the regulation matter.
Yeah.
I appreciate that.
That's awesome. These guys also have the Malua pool, too, and I appreciate that. If you get dominated in regulation, there is no overtime, and I appreciate that.
I like that.
I think that mandates that guys like push a higher degree of action now, and I think it was a really great change that I think the finishers guys, might have been the Midwest finishers, I thought the finishers guys like Zach and JM introduced that themselves.
I'm not sure where that came from. That's hugely important because I can watch finishers and not be mad about it. Most EBI events, so I like that they're 10-minute rounds because I'm not a huge fan of 10-minute rounds, but for EBI rules, it needs to be 10s.
Yep. You need enough time to work if you're going to go to overtime.
If they're going to have that overtime set, then you need enough time to give them a chance to actually hit the subs. I like that addition of
the sort of a pool.
Yeah, because it puts a little pressure on people. You don't see the guys that just kind of like dead fish to get into to
I'm going to stall until I get there and then be given a position I never got. So
your overtime specialists are not as obvious in finisher. So I appreciate that, and I really like finishers, despite me not generally liking EBI rules overall.
Yeah, we talk about the kind of the problems. We've been less and less complimentary of all rule sets. I think as time goes on,
except ADCC and Abu Dhabi Pro.
Yeah. But again, I appreciate that the finishers guys have made those changes.
And
we got a ton of finishes in the beginning 2 rounds of this, which we love to see because this rule set is looking for that, and they've made the changes to make that happen. So
I really appreciate that.
Yeah, props to them. Next
round,
let's
go Stoyle and Gavin.
Yep. This one does go to. We just talked about that overtime.
Yeah, right. This one does go to overtime, and this was my one. Like, damn, I really wish this was a slightly different rule set for this match because this was a fucking shootout.
This was
wild.
This was back and forth 50-50 to saddle and false reap for 10 minutes.
Yeah.
It was just like both guys like, oh, he's got a leg. Other guy's got a leg. It was a counter leg over and over and over and over and over and over.
And we saw this in, I think it was Gavin's finals match at
one of the
Pans, I think, was basically the same sort of thing. Just an absolute leg entanglement
a ton of
shootout.
matches from Gavin.
Yeah, I've seen
the
a lot
last,
of him
year and a half. We've seen
recently.
him live between Pans,
Yeah.
between trials, between
But
these.
I think his Pans finals match is the one that I'm really thinking of. That was an absolute shootout in the legs again,
think
and
so.
so this is a thing that he does. We know that. Just inherently, we've watched him a lot.
Develop it.
Yeah.
We watched him go at Copa Virginia. We watched him go from
4 years ago.
From one that was like back takes, and then the next one he's like, I'm playing legs now. And
Yeah.
then we watched him kind of develop that in the local scene and bring it to this level.
Yeah, and so both these guys looked really good in the entanglements. The defenses, like it was so in depth that I am not going to take time. It was so in depth and so long that I'm not going to take time to sit down and go through like particular techniques in it. But if you are looking for a match that is high level leg entanglement position sparring, this is something to go watch. Like, study this match as an example of how to interchange positions, counter off of people's attempts to develop your own new attacks and positions, because the thing that I liked about this is that every single defense led to an attack.
Yes.
Right? So Stoyle would defend properly.
They're being used as positions now, where it's like, hey, I defend, then I go to the next position for my counterattack.
Yes.
It's not what we saw 6-7 years ago, which is I'm holding a guy's hands, trying to prevent him from getting away on my leg locks.
Right. They're moving their legs and hands in a way that set up the next position, and so it feels very organic and feels very fluid.
This
and
match and the Ash Williams and Krikorian match on Grapple Fest. Like,
Yeah.
go back and watch these two matches for, hey, this is what high-level leg locks look like nowadays for guys that can use the leg locks as both submission offense and positional work to get what they want.
Yeah. So an absolute shootout, a really interesting match. This goes into overtime because neither are able to pull the finish off. Gavin goes first. Stoyle escapes. Stoyle takes Gavin's back and is able to finish him. It is what it is. These are the rules.
Yeah, we're not again.
Stoyle takes it.
Overtime's not our favorite, but again, Stoyle takes it. He does have a really, really neat switch he makes. Does a really great finish switch on the arm. He goes across with one arm super deep, like he's working for the choke, and then a beautiful switch to the other side arm.
Yeah.
And we're seeing guys get better and better at that hand switch across the neck, like fighting one side to the other side. And like, we have guys that are attritive with it, but more so, even like guys like Nicky Rod, we're seeing they're getting so good at just snapping the other hand across completely out from a side of the neck across and getting the finish on those snaps. And so we see Stoyle do that here in overtime. Next match, we had DeAndre Corbray defeating Fabian Ramirez via triangle armbar, like a minute 45 into the match, like very quick.
Yeah. So Corbray sits guard in this one, and Ramirez is pretty aggressively moving forward, more aggressively than
that's why Fabian, like, one of the reasons he's on Who's Next. Like, he's
sure.
a guy that's a
the
smaller
pace.
guy that pushes the pace and is out there to like go get it done.
Yeah. And I appreciate that. It did not play out for him
No, not
like
this
he
time.
might have hoped this time, and so that I think Corbray was able to use that forward momentum to grab the arm trap, and then he gets the underhook arm trap position on Ramirez, say I think his right arm, and then throws up a triangle over that left arm, like snappy, like right away,
very quick.
And so it's it was an interesting setup from Corbray, because I think a lot of times people aren't gonna throw that triangle up off of that arm trap because the other arm's free, right? You usually want you want to have some kind of disruption of the arm that you're trying to get your triangle around, and Corbray just kind of didn't give a shit about it. And Ramirez does what you would expect someone to do in this particular scenario, and he has his hand inside the triangle still. So like the outside arm's hand is still in the triangle, which is usually enough to play defensive. Now, the issue with this, though, in this particular case was that because Corbray had that arm trapped, typically what we would be hoping is that if that hand's in, we can get our hands clasped together.
Yeah.
And then if you can
you
get your
can build
hands
a
clasped
frame
together, you
out.
can frame, and you can sort of bench press the hips away a little bit, and you can sort of start wiggling your way out of that triangle. But Corbray has that arm trapped, that he would the inside arm trapped, so he can't get his hand to the hand that's stuck inside. So like his trapped arm, the inside arm, he can't connect to the outside arm, which has the hand inside still. And so eventually Ramirez switches a strategy from trying to get those hands connected to posturing up. And when he postures up, his hand sort of slips out. And now he's got good posture, but his hand has slipped out.
It kind of looked intentional. It looked like he was like, okay, because it seemed like he was in a weird middle spot where he couldn't really do anything with the trapped hand. So he wanted to get it out and then try, because he was up, to try to work a defense off of that.
And that's what it looked like to me as well. It looked like he moved that hand out intentionally, or there was a chance that maybe it got moved kind of funny, and then he had no choice but to take it out. It seemed like a weird choice to make for me, because me personally, I'm never trying to get that hand out of there unless I'm threatened in a way where I need to take it out. But
as a little guy, I like this defense because a lot of times I'll use the stand as enough of a disruption to get my hand out, but I can't really do the stand effectively because I'm crunched over with my own hand in my chest. So that's like...
It might be a body size dynamic kind of thing. But once that hand is out, then Corbray is patient with it, which is the thing that I noticed most about him in all of his matches. Is just, he was very patient and progressive, and so he slowly broke Ramirez's posture down and actually ends up finishing with like a mirror. Like, he's got Ramirez's posture broken all the way down, and may have been able to finish the triangle by resetting, but he sort of finishes with like a mirror lock kind of situation.
Very straight on triangle. Like, he has almost no angle cut to the side.
The tap, I don't think, was from the triangle. It was from the arm bar.
Yeah, I think it was like straight. Like a variation of a straight armbar.
It
didn't look like a mirror lock to me.
He was trapping the elbow like a mirror lock, but also the arm was straight and then twisting, so it was like it was somewhere halfway between a mirror lock and a straight arm lock, which I don't think it was shoulder pressure. I think it was at the elbow, but it was like a twisting version of it where you're trapping the elbow.
If you trap the elbow, and you can spin out the elbow easier that way, you can still kind of functionally get a variation of a mirror lock.
Yeah.
But for me, this looked like it was just elbow and not like a rotation elbow. But he was starting to do it where if Ramirez were to dig one way or the other, he can finish the mirror lock there. So,
but he finishes with an arm lock of some kind, straight arm lock probably. Looked really good with it. It was a pretty dominant finish pretty quickly.
So moving on to the finals, we have DeAndre Corbray taking on Dave Stoley. So apparently on commentary it said that Stoley had beaten Corbray like the week before on something.
And something. I don't know
and
what.
They didn't know.
Stoyle. It's not Stoley. It's Stoyle.
Stoyle. Sorry. It's been... You know me and names.
It's a day.
It's been an outro bumper on the show since 2018.
It's also weird that I'm correcting a name from you. So it's been a day. It's
been a day. New job's been good, but been rough.
Yeah. So Stoyle clearly wanted to play so Stoyle pulls guard, Corbray takes top. Stoyle clearly wants to play the false reap. They mentioned in the commentary that Stoyle had beat Corbray the week before, and so it kind of looked like maybe Corbray was like, I'm on to what your game plan is here.
Oh yeah, it looked like he had taken that match and went, yep, I specifically planned to see you again here today.
Yes, and so what Corbray does in this match is smart if you know that all Stoyle wanted to do was play the false reap. He clearly was doing everything he could to set up false reap, and he really didn't seem like he was trying to do too much else in this particular match. Corbray, I mean, occasionally he would default to trying to do something else, but it was mostly trying to get back to the position where he could start working into false reap again. Corbray did a really nice job controlling the outside ankle, which is what you want to do with someone. To be honest, it's what you want to do with someone that's trying to play inversions into leg entanglements anyways, right? It's a good idea, but especially if they're trying to specifically play that false reap position, because if you can control that ankle, keep it outside of your hip, they can't come in or underneath you to get. Like that foot needs to go to the inside hip.
Yeah.
And so it needs to cross through your hips entirely. And so Corbray is just doing a nice job keeping it tucked into that outside hip pocket. And he holds that position there from like a headquarters kind of passing position, holding that ankle on the outside of him for minutes and patiently waits for Stoyle to position his knee in a way where Corbray can then slide his hips forward and get his hips in front of Corbray's outside knee, or Stoyle's outside knee. And then he starts doing this really nice passing where he takes the knee that is not pinned, the knee that's not in the headquarters position, and places it inside Stoyle's hip, and then is basically high step passing to come out.
I had to watch this a couple of times. The first pass is what I kind of watched and rewatched over and over again. Is DeAndre he goes from like a shin pin, like knee cut on the cross side, on the close side, and then to pin Stoyle's leg down, he steps his outside leg that's basing out and pushing into the hip line in. he puts his knee on top to replace the knee cutting leg, very briefly knee cuts, and then steps it back out. And it was like a quick little hip switch that he almost like a windshield wiper over the pin leg to prevent that leg from coming back up. And it was like a quarter second of just like he comes up, he like squares and comes back, and he was past. It was some wild like fluid dynamic technique
it was
that
cool.
It was something I was like, oh, I'm gonna go and try to do that.
I'm gonna fail at that a bunch.
I'm gonna fail at that a bunch because again, there's a different way that I try to pin the leg when I pass there, but to see how dynamically like he could do that with shifting his balance was really, really cool. And the camera let you see the leg position. And this is one time I actually did like seeing the position from the back.
Yeah,
because
it was good there.
You might have missed this from a different camera angle.
Yeah, it was some really nice passing, and then Stoyle, so he gets that pass. He actually I think gets to mount off of that pass, but there's no points, so it doesn't necessarily matter. He can't finish from there. And then I think a little bit later he starts to do that same exact pass. Stoyle has kind of caught on to it a little bit and starts locking down that outside Corbre's outside hip a bit more, and is putting a little pressure outside there. And so instead Corbre climbs to mount off of this same setup. And so it was a really nice opportunity to see the progression of a technique series from someone. So it was kind of clear that Corbre passes this one way if he can, and then when he's blocked in that direction, he kind of does this climb to mount thing. Like, it was nice to see the transition or change in technique off of the same setup from Corbre there. And it was really interesting technique on that. Eventually, he's able to climb up to mount, and he finishes with an armbar from guard after being in mount for a little while.
He does the step over the head, like the judo style, like the I think katagatame or like is that the word for it?
Well, Stoyle is sort of turning his shoulders to try to almost move into turtle.
Yeah.
And then it's like it's the
Ronda, it's the Ronda armbar where she puts the shin behind the head, and there's a judo name for
and
that
rolls
specific
forward through it.
Jujugatame. That's the word.
Sure.
Jujugatame is what they call it in judo for this specific armbar. I know this specific armbar as a Jujugatame armbar, where instead of going over the face, you go shin behind the head, you fall off.
Well, it works that way. It works well that way because usually the one leg is tucked underneath already, and you roll forward onto it, which is what happened with Corbre here. And he's able to finish that armbar real tight, nice.
Toes back to guard, finishes it from the back, gets stacked on it, but is not going to let it go.
Yeah.
Drives up, finishes, standard belly up armbar from the guard, and is your finisher 17 champion. Takes home $2K. Again, love seeing guys get paid.
Yeah.
That's how you get professional athletes and people to continue to stay in the sport, is you pay them and you give them incentive.
Weird.
And so I love that. Again, I love that the finishers guys are paying out. 17 events, so I can't wait to see the next one. Awesome on Flow. 2 other title fights on this match. We had a 105 pound inaugural title versus Faye Charrier and Christina Pinto. Faye finishes that via a heel hook. Goes super, super nasty heel hook. Switches the grip to go from like the standard heel hook grip to the belly down grip on it and just knocks out. I did that a couple weeks ago, and it's
pretty brutal.
It crunches quick, and it was crazy. So it's awesome to see Faye taking the inaugural 205-pound title. Again, I love that the finishers guys are bringing in the smaller women's weight classes into the title picture now.
Yeah.
Hopefully they're going to run maybe a GP.
That'd be cool.
Or like an event with them.
That would be cool.
It would be awesome. Now that we have a champion, we have someone defending, put them in the bracket as they usually do.
Yeah.
It would be great. Or, keep them on cards as title fights.
Yeah.
We also had a 135-pound title fight. We had Alex Enriquez, who we've been super hot on for a while, since trials, I think, is really where we keyed in that she was really good. Taking on Nicole Matthews, beats her in ride time. Alex is really going for the legs in regulation. This is about a 20-minute match, and, Alex is able to take that on ride time and is the 135-pound champion. Big props to the guys, the finishers, specifically Zak Maslany, for getting results out, putting them on Flow. I do appreciate that, that I talked to Zak very briefly at the Craig Jones seminar that was at his gym about they get those out. And so other organizers, I would love to see them kind of take a renewed effort.
It makes a huge difference
to get their stuff out and parsed out, and like there were individual matches lined up. Like, it allows us, when you have a huge weekend like this with all of these matches, to be able to cover it and be able to watch it and enjoy it and point listeners to those specific matches. So
And
props to him for
absolutely
making that scene in PA and even
just
all
making
the
things
way
easier on your viewers. It's not just us that are trying to commentate on the thing or trying to talk about the things soon after. It's the average person that wants to watch this, having results up makes a huge difference. You can look through who's where and what's
and then
happened
all the
and
matches
find the
are
interesting
pushed out. If you just want to watch the semifinals, right? You can essentially look at a guy's run, and then you can easily follow a guy if you don't have the time or aren't looking to watch the whole event. It's such a good quality of life thing, and I don't know how much replay guys get out of that because Flow doesn't share that data.
Yeah.
But I assume that it is massive because you can point to individual matches and find them again, as opposed to needing to go through a whole card that may or may not have results and sort of get lost to time. So props to Zach on that. Really appreciate that he does that.
That sort of leads into one of the other major events this weekend was a Abu Dhabi World Pro.
Yeah.
And honestly, I will go back and watch this. I will watch World Pro. If World Pro was the only thing happening this weekend, then it's absolutely what we would have spent the entire time covering. It is my favorite gi rule set.
Yep, hands down.
I love it. I love the matches. They're always very exciting. The competition was very high level this time. We had to choose between a lot of events. A lot of matches this weekend. We can only do so long of a show. We can only talk about so many matches.
Yep.
The GP was nicely broken out into videos. Finishers was nicely broken out into videos with results up. Abu Dhabi World Pro is one long video that you have to search through to find the matches that you want to talk about, the finals and things like that. It takes forever to do that.
Yep.
And so when we have to sit down and choose, okay, do we do the GP and finishers? Do we do the finishers in Abu Dhabi World Pro? We have to do the ones that we can spend the time on. And so we don't really get...
We would have been able to do only World Pro this week, and I thought there were some great matches on both finishers and on GP, so it was a judgment call. So unfortunately, we have results here for
my
World
point was
Pro.
just that these quality of life things make a difference for all kinds of stuff. The World Pro's quality of life privileges or things that they've given us are on the lower side here. It's just one long video that we have to search through. And
production quality is phenomenal.
Production quality is very good.
It was weird. We had two sets of commentary running at the same time, and I was very confused because that's a first. Usually World Pro is pretty much the best produced event that runs.
I had to watch everything else, so I didn't get a chance to go check it yet.
There was two different commentaries running. You could hear the original commentary with the secondary English commentary running at the same. It wasn't like it was a little distracting. The English commentary was very, very good.
Yeah.
I forget. I've been blanking on who did the English commentary. Very, very good commentator. Yeah. Very happy to have them on. But there was both broadcasts coming through.
That's a little weird for them. They're usually very high quality.
Yeah, so that was weird this year. I'm gonna go back and watch this week because again I love World Pro.
Yeah.
May get a chance to talk about it next week, but just not sure.
Yeah.
I'll move on. I'll move through results. We have 56 kilogram division. Zaid it's gonna be one of these weeks. Zaid Akhtarhiri takes 56 kilograms. Miriam Maguire. I can never get Mayram. I can never get his name when I see it written down. Takes 62 kilograms. We have Diego Sodre taking 69 kilograms. Lucas Prosterio taking 77 kilograms. Felipe Andrew taking 85 kilograms. We have Cartelo Vela taking 94 kilograms. We have Yatan Bueno taking 120 kilograms. We have Brenda Larissa taking 49 kilograms. Ana Rodriguez taking 55 kilograms. Julia Alves taking 62 kilograms. Isildur Cristina taking 70 kilograms. And Gabriel Pasana taking 95 kilograms. Again, a lot of names we talk about frequently on the show.
Yep.
Love to watch their matches. I'm going to go back this week and watch them.
Yeah. And the rule set at World Pro is just set up in a way that pushes action. It's exciting.
In the gi.
It's my favorite rule set in the gi. I really wish that we could have chosen to do this week. But
so
maybe next time.
That does it. Next week, I think we just have a fight to win, and we had one other.
Yeah, there's another event.
There was another event. Let me.
Rise.
Yeah, Rise is
but
back.
we don't have much information on that right
Yeah, we don't
now.
have a lot of, at least on the flow side for information. We don't have any card listing for there, so we'll cover that next week. But overall, really fun week of matches. I had a ton of fun.
Yeah.
Watching that. Love seeing the Corbett brothers there.
Yeah.
So, very fun week.
Lots to do. And I had enough time to watch what we were going to talk about. I'll spend my week catching up on World Pro because that'll be exciting. And
What's your week look like? Anything fun this week?
Not really. My wife and I always stay in town for Thanksgiving and aren't a big fan of turkey, so we make a duck.
Ooh, that'd be good.
Yeah.
This will be the first. So I have a new job and I have no time off, so I always take off historically Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, because in the U.S. we get Thursday and Friday off.
Yeah.
So I take 3 days off to get the week. I have no time off this year, so your boy working Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and then Rachel flies home Thanksgiving because the flights were way cheaper. So it'll be great to have her home, and then we'll hang out, do Thanksgiving stuff, and then do Friday stuff. Black Friday.
Do Friday stuff.
I'll get paid for the first time, so that would be very nice.
Yeah, that's nice.
And then
get paid on Black Friday.
I'm excited.
What a disaster.
I'm excited. Like, wake up, like we're gonna do Black Friday shopping. Is the true American
Black Friday
spirit.
shopping is my absolute nightmare.
It used to be really
pay
good.
more money to not deal with people.
I'm not gonna go out and shop anymore.
Oh, like on the internet.
On the internet, Black Friday shopping. Because it used to be Cyber Monday, and they were like, we can take their money for 4 days.
Yeah.
And then I'm like, thanks, guys. So
appreciate that.
I got some game stuff I'm gonna buy, and I'm gonna have a good time.
Nice.
Might get a GameCube account running to play some Melee.
GameCube account?
I might play some Smash Brothers online.
Oh, okay.
I'm looking forward to it.
Nice.
I might buy some stuff to get that up and running for myself.
GameCube was probably the best.
It is the best
System that
it's
existed.
great. You ever played Super Smash Brothers Melee?
I'm not a
it's
big
amazing.
Smash Brothers fan. I played the shit out of Mario Golf on GameCube, though. That game was incredible.
That was a good golf game.
Yeah, that was the best golf.
The Double Dash guy
Double Dash
and a
was
Melee
really
guy.
good.
I was a Melee guy.
Yeah.
Like that's what I played. And,
Yeah,
and it's
I
had
played
a
it a
giant
little bit.
resurgence in the last couple of years. So I'm like very happy that there's now a huge competitive scene for it that's remained. And I'm like, yes, I can be the old guy yells at Cloud at this community. So it's awesome and it's been cool. But I've been getting the bug to like set up an account to be able to play. And there's some adapters, some other stuff I need. And I'm like, I think it's time. I think it's time. So I think that would be Thanksgiving break for me. Is
nice.
Like going, I earned it. I earned the right to get dunked on by players that are much better at this game than I used to be good at.
Nice.
So it'll be good. And also,
that sounds like fun.
Yeah, I'm excited for. Other than that, again, nothing else going on. We got some promotions coming up at some of the gyms, so that will be exciting.
One, Austin, who does the show semi-regularly, is getting his black belt. Long deserved.
Yeah. Long deserved.
Yeah, so that's exciting.
Yeah, so it's fun. We have promotions for some of our guys too.
Yeah, for some of the guys at Hopkins. We have some guys from our gym.
Yep,
getting
going
promoted soon.
So it's the promotion season. I love it.
Yeah, it's great.
Always great. So Zach, anything else?
Nope.
All right, as always in the show, I'm your host Maine, to the co-host
Zach,
and we got the grappling rewind. Just on that, whatever it is, stay safe. If you like the show, please consider sharing it on Facebook with the folks at your gym. It's the best way that we grow the show, and we really appreciate it. You can reach out to us on email.
We also have Instagram. We have Facebook. We have Twitter. We have Google+.
Until that shuts down.
We have a website.
If you have an event you would like to have us cover, please let us know. If you have a name, like most people do, and you'd like to have us stop butchering it,
let us know.
Reach out to us. The show is also available on YouTube, Spotify, in addition to iTunes and every other podcast service. We very much appreciate your time, and thank you.